Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs, it is Sunday, so it is time to start getting ready for the Viva and Barnes Law Extravaganza. Can you feel the joy? Joy! Joy! Oh God, I'm going crazy with that.
Joy! 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 Joy!
For those of you who don't quite get the reference, that was Reverend Al Sharpton at the DNC screaming joy in the most angry and tyrannical manners possible. We've got to come up with a word for joy and anger. We might call it like joingry or something. It's ridiculous and it's crazy, but it's not just that Al Sharpton looked like the raging lunatic screaming joy, joy, like he was possessed, like he was a demon. Many of you out there might not know that there was a leisure organization of the Nazi Party, that is Nazi Germany, and they were literally called Strength Through Joy.
Joy! 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 Joy!
So the irony of Reverend Al Sharpton and the Democrat Party adopting the strategy of unity through joy, or whatever the hell that they are doing with that joy term.
Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy.
I hope the irony is not lost on the party that literally selected their candidate, bypassing all elections, literally uses the judicial system to go after their rivals, censor their rivals, suppress their rivals, jail their rivals. Yeah, I hope the irony is not lost on the Democrats, although I think it is, because they lack introspection, they lack insight, they are just a bunch of bumbling idiots. That's not the topic of today's vlog. Well, I guess in a way it might be related to today's vlog. Today, the breaking news, or it occurred yesterday, was the arrest of Telegram's CEO and founder Pavel Durov. Arrested in not Russia, not China, because Pavel doesn't visit those countries. We're going to get to that at the end of this vlog. He was arrested in France, and people out there are like, well, let's just let the process play out. We don't know. This guy might very well be guilty. I'm at the point now where the government doesn't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. Full stop. When law enforcement raids Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, I'm not going to sit there and say they might have a good reason. Let me wait a couple of days. No, they had better show their damn good reason immediately, and it had better be a damned good reason. When the government petitions the court and says we need to seize private communications of the president on his social media account, we'll get there in a second as well, I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there's a good cause for doing this. No, they better show their damn good reason immediately, because to many right-minded people, it seems like an absolute abuse of the process to go after political rivals. So when they arrest the CEO of Telegram in France, they better have a damn good reason right away to disclose to the general population. Otherwise, people might think it's actual just politics at play. From Le Monde, Pavel Durov, the founder and CEO of the Telegram messaging application, was arrested on arrival in France on Saturday, August 24, as part of proceedings accusing Telegram of complicity in numerous cases linked to drug trafficking, support for terrorism, and cyberstalking. Durov was arrested at Le Bourget airport, where he was on his way to Paris for the evening, accompanied by his bodyguard and assistant, as revealed by French news channel Téléfrance 1 LCI. Now, for those of you who might have been living under a rock, Pavel Durov is the CEO and founder of Telegram. Telegram is an encrypted messaging app that has been used for people to share information on a great many issues, political issues, although the platform aims to be politically neutral, as Pavel confirmed in an interview to Tucker Carlson about a month ago. And there's a highlight from that interview that has aged like fine wine, or I don't know which way it goes actually, because he was quite prescient in his warning of which countries he does and does not travel to. We'll get there at the end of the video. Pavel also founded another social media company which was colloquially referred to as the Russian Facebook, which he had to sell his interest in because of demands being made by Russia, and he had to flee Russia because they were asking for censorship that he didn't want to implement on his social media platforms. So he fled Russia to go to the free West, France, where he was promptly arrested for other reasons. I'm sure they're good reasons. I'm sure it's not political whatsoever. And for those of you who don't know geography too well, France is in Europe. It's a neighboring country to England. England is a country in which people are literally getting arrested and sentenced to years in prison for social media posts.
For the offence of publishing written material in order to stir up racial hatred, there are sentencing guidelines which I must and will follow. As is recognised on your behalf, this offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable. Would you stand, please? The sentence that I pass has been reduced by 1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment.
So to not view this as something of a global attack on free speech on social media platforms, it would be very, very short-sighted, bordering on absolute willful blindness or ignorance. This is an attack on social media. This is an attack on free speech. And this is an attack that hitherto the principals at these social media companies have been playing ball on, but Pavel Durov was not playing ball, and now he's arrested. Coincidence? I think not. When it came to Facebook censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story, when the FBI came up to him and said, you know, you might have some Russian disinformation coming on the platform, you might want to censor that story, Zuckerberg caved. When it came to Twitter before Elon acquired it and intelligence came up to Dorsey at the time, maybe it wasn't Dorsey, but when intelligence came up to Twitter, when they had infiltrated Twitter, because remember James Baker, former general counsel for the FBI, was within Twitter. When they came in and said, you better censor that Hunter Biden laptop story, Twitter acquiesced and censored the story, thus impacting the 2020 election. And here's a story that many of you might not be aware of. We've talked about it on the show many times, so those who watch the channel or are part of the vivabarneslaw.locals.com above average community, you already know this, but the authorities actually approached Twitter back then and demanded communication of Donald Trump's private DMs within his Twitter account. Not only that, but they refused to allow Twitter to disclose that to Donald Trump, and they actually refused to go through the NARA process, the National Archive Registration, whatever, the NARA process. They refused to go through the NARA process to get Donald Trump's private communications, private correspondence, private DMs on Twitter, because that would have required them to disclose to Donald Trump that they were going after it, and they actually got this from a court, and now Twitter is taking it to the Supreme Court by way of certiorari. I always have trouble pronouncing that word. By way of certiorari, so hopefully the Supreme Court takes the case, but if you're not familiar with that, here's just a highlight from that request. Questions presented. Months after publicly announcing investigations into former President Donald Trump, the government served Twitter Inc. with a warrant seeking private communications sent and received by the former president during his presidency. The government also served a non-disclosure order barring Twitter from notifying the former president or a representative about the warrant. The courts below rejected Twitter's First Amendment challenge to the non-disclosure order after ordering Twitter to produce the communications without affording the former president an opportunity to assert privilege over them. As a result, quote, for the first time in American history, end quote, a court, quote, ordered disclosure of presidential communications without notice to the president and without any adjudication of executive privilege, end quote. You can call this whatever you want. You can call it communism, you can call it fascism, you can call it statism. What it is a total assault on our freedoms, a total assault on freedom of speech, and a total weaponization of all aspects of government in collusion with or coercion over social media companies to take away all of our individual fundamental rights. And yet, despite all of this, despite years of the government weaponizing all aspects of the government to go after, pressure, coerce social media companies to do their bidding for them, you still have some people sucking on that boot. Sorry, that might not be the right expression. Licking on that boot of tyranny, saying, I'm sure they have a good reason to do it. After all, they told us it has to do with not complying with drug trafficking, whatever investigations. They make up the excuse to steal your rights, and there are people out there licking that boot saying, yes, daddy, govern me harder. Edward Snowden at Snowden. The arrest of at Durov is an assault on the basic human rights of speech and association. I am surprised and deeply saddened that Macron has descended to the level of taking hostages as a means for gaining access to private communications. It lowers not only France, but the world. Edward Snowden says he's surprised. I think he's being tongue-in-cheek or maybe a little bit too polite. I, for one, am not surprised. This is the same Macron who talked about censorship as relates to reporting on the recent riots in France. This is in the context of the EU sending a letter to Elon Musk telling him that he has to censor Donald Trump or, I don't know, fact check him or not allow him to speak because he might say something that the EU considers to be disinformation. This is in the same realm, the same universe as the UK, which is literally jailing people for speech. Literally jailing people for saying mean things about illegal immigrants or immigrants on social media and being sentenced to 2+ years in some cases. It's atrocious. It's not surprising whatsoever.
You're saying it weird. Why are you putting so much emphasis on the H?
It is indeed deeply saddening, but to me, not surprising at all. The last time I was in France in 2015, I said I'm never coming back to this country again. I'm glad my kids got to see a part of it, even if they don't remember, because I'm never going back. I might never get to see England. The degree to which that country has fallen, I now fear going to England as much as I fear going to China, and I'm not exaggerating and I'm not being hyperbolic. I fear going to England, and I'm not going to go to England, and it has nothing to do with the migrant issue in England. It has to do with the government in England. And now to come right back to the beginning and sort of end where we started, Pavel gave an interview on Tucker Carlson where he was talking about which countries he avoids. And he says, I don't go to weird countries. I make sure to travel to countries that sort of share my perspective, my values of the world. Well, I think he just learned a very valuable lesson. Do not visit France. Do not do business in France. Have nothing to do with France because France is no better than China or Russia at this point. And with that said, if you like what I do, you know what to do. Make sure that you are liked, shared, subscribed, that you have notifications turned on. And then whenever I put out a video, you make sure to give it a thumbs up, drop a comment, give it a thumbs down. And if you do, drop a comment and let me know why. If you want to support the channel, you can go to Viva Frei merch, vivabarneslaw.locals.com for the best above average community out there. But more important than anything, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life. And now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
So one of the things we learned when Elon Musk bought Twitter is that the intel agencies, not just US, but a bunch of other countries, the usual suspects, were all over the company. I mean, some of them were present working at the company. They had access to the direct messages. You can just imagine, well, you know because you run one. But the wealth of data flowing through would be of great interest to governments. Does that make you paranoid that you'll be penetrated? I mean, I assume governments would like to know what's going on privately on Telegram.
Well, there's definitely a lot of responsibility that we have on our shoulders, and I wouldn't say we are paranoid, but I think it makes sense to stay prudent and not being too accessible, not traveling to weird places.
You don't travel to weird places?
I hope not. I travel to places where I have confidence that those places are consistent with what we do and our values. I don't go to any of the big geopolitical powers of the countries like China or Russia or even the US. So
you don't go to the US?
Try not to. I can go, but it's too much attention, like I described before.
Yeah, because at some point, if you run something like this, you're a player in world politics. I mean, whether you want to be or not, don't you think?